This is a story of stellar success from kitchen or kitchens through to the world's biggest independent games media business. 140 people employed. It's been around for 10 years now, and a little bit intriguingly, it's just gone through a corporate restructure, which we just have to understand what on earth that means. But I really want to understand, what's the motivation for Tim and the team, what it's like working with his co-frayer, who isn't here tonight, James Binns, two of them running a business, how does that work? Tim, please come forward and let's explore entrepreneurialism with you and Network N. Good man. You all right?
Yes.
How's your table or tables?
Very good. I think they think I'm very nervous.
Oh, no, you're not. Well, I'll tell you what, let's begin with home territory stuff. Set the scene a little bit about Network N, what the scale of business is like now. I mentioned there's 140 people, but a little bit about, for those who don't know, what you actually do, how the agency side works, and so on. So tell us about the business.
So we're three businesses, really. The first one is a publishing business. I was a journalist before I started the business, and I always loved video games, loved making content about video games. And so we started a website about PC games. That website, which is called PC Games N, is one of about 8 or 9 that we run now. And the publishing part of the business reaches about 20 million, 25 million people a month. PC Games N
just says it blithely, 25 million a month. That's a remarkable number. And presumably, day one was sort of no one.
Yeah, so we started it from scratch, and it was really hard to grow. I think for 3 years before we'd even reached 1 million users.
And if you graphed it, it would be shallow, and then like that, presumably, something of that nature. No?
So no, it's like that, and then like that, and then it just keeping it going.
Actually, sorry, I'm going to interrupt you. Come back to an earlier stage. So there you were. You and James had successful careers from a media business called Future. How and why did you decide to give up that? Good positions you had there. I was really frustrated working for a big corporate company, and I'd been through a series of professional challenges where sometimes in companies, success is your worst enemy, where you run into the politics of high-level meetings or high-level sort of corporate people. And I'd run off and done a series of projects that had been pretty successful, and it pretty much ended my career there. James, my co-founder, had come to the end of his time there, and for sort of similar reasons, really. And we just thought, screw this, we'll go and do our own thing. And you had, I don't know, but you didn't have a huge amount of money behind you.
Oh God, no! So we've never taken investment. We've never taken really any loans or anything else. We all started. It's just money that we had lying around. James got a pay. Yeah. Well, no, but James had a payoff coming off the back of Future. I didn't have anything. I just couldn't stand it there anymore. So,
so in conventional terms, you bootstrapped the business. Yeah. You had some amount of money, not a huge amount. And what, a belief? Was there a plan?
So the thing we wanted to make, the thing we thought we were going to make was like a web aggregator for content about games. And if you're into World of Warcraft or into Fortnite or anything else, we thought we could make loads of cool fan sites about those games. Turned out it's an awful plan, and it just didn't work. And so for the first year, we were just burning through any savings we had, really struggling to get traffic, really just didn't have a clue what we were doing or how we were going to grow it.
This is very open and honest, and most entrepreneurs would probably gloss over the bit where you didn't know what the hell you were doing. But this is quite material. What did you learn during that time, other than certain things were a really bad idea?
So I think there was a moment coming off the back of our first trade show where real-time analytics is a brutal thing for anyone who runs a web business. And you can see in real time how many people are on your website, what they're looking at, how long they've been on the page or anything else. And the reality is we had a pretty decent E3. E3 is a trade show. And we'd managed to sort of wrangle a bunch of interviews and exclusives that were trafficking. And then we came back, and the Sunday morning following the show, we looked at our analytics, and there were 3 people on our website. and
one of them was your mum.
One of them was me. One of them was James. And then I realised I had my laptop on in the other room. So you sort of realise what a state we're in, that literally, like, the internet doesn't care. Like, it just does not care what you're doing at any other point.
And you can tell that story with a smile on your face, but then when you saw there were 3 people, and you had some great content from E3 and so on, no one was watching. No. What did you think?
I panicked and said we have to stop this straight away and go back to our old jobs and beg for them back.
Were you sort of tied together at this point? If one goes, both goes.
Well, I think the James and I, when we started, we had great beliefs in, everything all we knew from working at Future, all our colleagues, all the professional contacts we had, and that goes so far. It gets you for like the first 6 months, maybe 9 months, but after that you are very much on your own. And the only thing we really had was each other, sort of to try and push each other on, try and bring us back to the focus that we're trying to have.
What was your, as intimate as you wish, really? What was your relationship like? Was one of you the more confident, the more determined, and the other was like, oh, really, and being pulled along, or how did it work?
James has always been the sort of more commercial one, but he's also been the more, I'd say, boisterous.
By the way, for those who don't know James, that's a complete euphemism. I've got him on camera. Edit.
And I think but he's always been also the one who would come across as the most driven and the most sort of determined about what's going to happen. Whereas I'm more like, oh God, that's never going to work, or that's just a disaster. And so James will throw 100 ideas out of what we could do, and maybe there's 1 or 2 that we can go, actually this works if we
as many as 1 or 2.
Yeah, well, yeah. But
that's an awful lot of sifting you've been doing over the years.
Yeah, a lot of, and there's a lot of failed starts or I wouldn't necessarily say mistakes, because you learn from them. But there's always been moments where we go, actually that's really good. And I think the best memories I have inside the business generally are where we both go, oh God, actually that's going to be all right, and we can bring each other together. We fight like cats and dogs, and sometimes our relationship is much lower, but we've always managed to find a way through.
It's a bit difficult when you've worked so closely under such stress at different times with a person. Could you ever have imagined, or now imagine looking back, of having done it on your own?
No, absolutely not. So I have, where the business is today, we have a bunch of leaders who are trying to run their section of the business. And the conclusion I've sort of come to over the last 3 or 4 years is that that's everything that you are able to do as a leader. All the traits that you have is both the things that are going to make you win, but also sort of sow the seeds of the challenges that you're going to have as well. If you're detail orientated, you'll do a brilliant budget, you'll do everything else, but you won't be able to see the bigger picture. If you're super commercial, all you'll think about is the clients and not necessarily what the margin or the effective rate of return is on a particular part of the thing. And so what I'm trying to smush together now in terms of business is always setting people up in pairs where we can, James and I have had a success based on 1 or 2 people like us two working together, but trying to give someone just a massive business area to do on their own, it's always too much, and we've always ended up burning through or causing people too much stress in those situations.
So come back to those early days. It was test, learn, do, that sort of approach, multiple stuff not working. So I'm assuming you subscribe to the argument that you actually you learn more from failure than you do from success. You had, I'm not being critical, you had a whole bunch of things which didn't work. It's the nature of an early stage business.
Yeah, I think so. We tried to make a price comparison website at one point and trying to go up against Trustpilot and Metacritic, that was a pointless exercise. We spent a year just in rooms trying to make that work. Don't do that. That's really silly. But it's not just in products, but learning how to manage, learning how to build teams, learning how to manage the money. Like for like the first 5 years, we had no idea what our margins were. We had no idea all the liabilities that we were carrying. We had no insurance. Like it's just, we didn't have these kind of things. We didn't have this sort of background or educational understanding to make it work. And it's only once you get into a particular challenge or crisis that you learn very quickly that maybe insurance or HR or
matters.
An overdraft is important. Right?
If only you'd had some great advisors at an early stage giving you brilliant advice and you'd have stuck with, etc., etc. But who knows? I mean, it's a slightly facile point, but I'll make it anyway. That is, of course, one of the things about EntreConf. It's spotting those early stage businesses, yours 7, 8 years back or whatever, who are the stars of tomorrow. And of course, many may not be. So at what point did you... Comfortable, I suspect, is not the word for you, but at what point do you think, okay, this sort of works now. We're sort of over that god-awful hump of starting and trying and doing, and this sort of coalesces into a thing.
So there was a point about 3 years ago maybe 4 years ago, pre-pandemic, where I was looking at the different areas of the business and what it is we do, and sort of took a step back and said, right, I know how we can scale each of these, and if we do it right, this is the outcome. And actually, it was it's just a series of steps, right? You know, you've got some level of market fit for the products you're doing. You understand that the teams are set up in a way where they can actually deliver the things you're going to do. So at that point, it's just putting in the work and putting in the time and energy. And I think that was...
I suspect you're heavily oversimplifying it.
I don't think it is, because we spent 5 years not really understanding how our business works. So the only analogy I can think of is, every analogy I have is based around video games, by the way, so just bear that in mind.
Mine are mostly around sports, so there you go.
So teams might spend 5 years making a game, and while they're doing that, they might be starting from scratch or with a piece of technology, and they're understanding what makes it fun, what makes it exciting, how to make it successful. But they spend 5 years learning that, and then they put out the product, right? So the sequel is always so much better because they've got all these lessons and learning. And I think that's true for just the business in general. We had to have like 5 or 6 years of going, this is how to build ad tech, this is how to run a publisher, this is how to run how to talk to clients. And it's only once you've had that experience and sort of knowledge, not just in yourself, but in the organization as well, that you can actually scale it. Particularly for us, because we didn't really talk to anyone.
Well, that's. I was going to ask you about from an advisor point of view, not literally those in the audience. We'll come on to that in a moment. But the basic principle of having people give you advice. Yeah. On balance, do you think, looking back, it would have been better had we had advice? Alternatively, because we had to do it, we learned so much more, and it became more ingrained.
So I don't know. That's
the dumb question. You're right.
We had a few people sniffing around at the start to be non-execs or chairmans or anything else, and I think I found it really distasteful really quickly. And we had one moment where we took a guy out for dinner. We'd had like £400 in the bank, and he ordered a massive steak, and then just expected us to pay for it, and then he was going to be our chairman. I'm just like, you know what, this is ridiculous. Like, if that's how he treats the business at this stage, like, why are we going to sort of entertain this process? And so I just thought, well, no, we're just going to get on with it. Now, that's like one individual, but it's funny how those experiences very early on shape your perspective on what it is you think later on.
And you and James, in your different ways, battled through it, tested, learnt, shared experience, whatever, and got through those formative years. Tell us a bit about the, I don't know, say 5 years in, how many people was that, roughly speaking? Ish.
Probably about 40, 45.
Which is chunky, which is really chunky. So tell us how the culture evolved then and how the culture differs now. So
I think when we started, because of James and my background at Future, we were sort of viewed as a mini Future, and we pulled a load of people in as whether sort of junior or senior roles. So there was a bunch of like senior people with a bit of experience, but then we went mad on intern schemes. And there was an amazing Santander intern scheme, for instance, and we pulled a load of people out of Bath, BSU for that. So there was a bunch of experienced people leading quite young people. It's like generally their first jobs. But it was manic, like every opportunity, every potential client, everything that we could possibly do, we would just do. And it was an amazing time. And in the course of, a year and a half, we went from being a publishing business to being a publishing business with an agency attached, with a network attached, and just all in that one time, just going, yes, we'll do that, yes, we'll do that, yes, we'll do that. No, we won't make our aggregator or price comparison site.
And what were you trying to do at that time? Were you trying to, in conventional terms, build scale? Were you trying to make money? What was your actual motivation at that midpoint?
You know what, like, we had a broad idea of what it could be, but we didn't have like a clear strategy or plan. It was just, this is what the clients are saying, this is what the market is doing, this is what the last conversation we had with the dude at the press conference. Like, it's just, and we just do anything to try and keep the business going. I think, we were very, we understood that the thing that we made, the absolute best decision we ever made is picking video games as a market. So, the way to explain that is, if there's one person born every 3 seconds, every single one of them is going to play video games. So there's an infinite number of children in the planet.
Wait a second, every single one of them's going to eat as well.
Well, yeah, and they're going to have a mobile in their hand and they're going to learn to play video games. And it will be, whatever you think or say, it will be the dominant form of entertainment within the next 10 to 15 years.
I know that's been coming for some long time. But
all we need to do is go, PC gaming, which is the thing I love, is the most entrepreneurial part of it, because Microsoft and Sony, you don't have to ask permission from them to go and join it. So hitch your wagon to that and just let it drag you along. And I still believe that, like, our markets, every time there's a challenge, it's always adapted and figured a way through.
So why, and this is a bit of a dumb question, like a few have been, but why do you think, given that, if you take the macro position, it's about the sort of inexorable rise of computer games, specifically PC games, why do you think you've succeeded when multiple others haven't, or at least not to the same degree?
So we've been in a really fortunate position, and we've had the ability to create 3 businesses around that area, and we've had good knowledge of our clients, good knowledge of the industry. We've had I don't know, Greg.
Success is told by the victor, so you can post-rationalize your success.
So you can, but I don't know realistically if we are successable versus our competitors, right? And that's so if you take video games.
Does that matter?
Well, I guess that's the sort of the bigger theme. Does it matter to me where we are against our competitors? Not really, because I'm really happy with the work we do. I'm really happy with the products we make. I'm really happy with the teams we have. I'm really happy with the environment we work in. And there's a specific sort of thing people say, the difference between lifestyle businesses and sort of like these big businesses, like where there's almost like you get to look down on lifestyle businesses because they run a lifestyle. Well, I think that's just nonsense. Like, whether we are successful versus our competitors or not, it's whether we enjoy, love our work, we're paying 100 odd mortgages. Like, that's enough, man. Like,
well, in a sense, that's back to what I was trying to say at the beginning about having success on your own terms, and if you define success as that. But I want to come on to this other point. You have very recently undergone a corporate restructuring. Could you explain what that is, why that is, who was involved, and what it might mean?
Okay, so
lots to talk about.
So Network N grew into 3 businesses. So as we were growing our publishing business, we found it really hard to sell advertising because we just weren't big enough. And James was constantly getting knockbacks from our clients who would say, go and join a network. they'll sell your ads for you. Stop coming to us. Like, just please leave us alone. And so James,
how did he respond to that?
So James is a stubborn guy, and his response was, "Well, we'll start our own network." And so we pulled together a few friendly sites and said, "We'll sell your ads, we'll sort out your ad tech," and we created our own network. And so that has scaled really well over the last 5 years. And then at the same time, the answer to marketing games isn't necessarily just sell ads. It might be run a community. It might be do social media. It might be make a magazine, or or video production. And so we ended up building an agency that ran alongside the network and the publishing business as well.
Client services.
Yeah, exactly. So we're in a position now where the agency, our network. So our agency is called Project N. Our network is called Publisher Collective, and then confusingly, our publishing business is called Network N. So just
did anyone get that?
So it's obvious. Yeah, exactly. It makes perfect sense at the time. So each of those businesses were just smushed together as they're all working together. But now we're in the process of picking them apart and saying, Project N, you can exist independently. Publisher Collective.
And what does that mean, exist independently?
So they have their own P&L, they have their own budget, they have their own bank accounts, they are separate companies. We'll have a holdco above as basically a function of the demerger that we're going through. But that company has to sit and stand and exist on its own 2 feet.
What's the advantages of that?
So the first thing is I wish we'd done it 5 years ago when our friends at Bishop Fleming said you should do this. But so there's legal and compliance thing. There's spread your risk. You don't want something over here to create contagion over there. In cruder terms, if something goes to rat shit here, if it goes bust even, it drags down or whatever. So as a publisher as well, every day we're at the mercy of our staff writers writing something really stupid and libelous. And is
that in your T's and C's?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
don't advertise with us. You never know.
If one of our writers were to say something a bit ridiculous, we have a legal liability that's spread across an agency and a network as well. Right. So there's a load of risk management in that as well.
Which is in some ways, whilst structurally that may be applicable to other companies, it's particularly true. I'd imagine if you put it this way around, you're dealing with some of the largest, most successful entertainment companies on the planet. One comment over here.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's also it's a bit poacher gamekeeper to have your own publisher and also be representing other publishers, and it's not really fair or right. It's something our competitors neg us on all the time. So I'm pretty determined to make sure that our publishing business is just to clients.
Isn't that a bit smoke and mirrors, isn't it? It's sort of obvious. You're pretending that's separate to that, but they're all the same thing. They're same genus. They've got the same holding company above.
Yeah, they fight all the time, Greg. Our clients, a publishing business that we own is constantly shouting at our network and ad tech people. So
why not?
Yeah.
Why not? What does tell us how this came out. You referenced Bishop Fleming, Paul Morris's work on taxation some time back, and then recently.
Yeah.
Why did you? And I'm not going to be specific to Bishop Fleming, but why did you choose to have a particular level of professional advisor to help you navigate this course? And how did the legal side work?
So we've been working with Bishop Fleming for about, I'll say, 5 or 6 years. We started out with a small accountant, just a high street accountant.
That's a bookkeeper, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And they're doing our sort of tax and everything else. But I wish we'd started with a firm or a business at that kind of level, just because, there is so many headaches we're trying to unpick at the moment around not having stuff that should have been done for us. But I think when you're starting out, it's easy for the smaller accountants to use the lack of your knowledge just to hide behind, they're not actually very good at what they do.
As long as they're one step ahead of you, then
exactly,
the fact that they're nowhere near as many steps as they should be.
And exactly. And I always have my sort of suspicions and gut feelings about certain things, but and then the level of support that they can give you and actually understand it, it's on a different class. And I think So we're doing a lot of the legal work. We're working with Dom and Alex at Burgess Salmon as well. And again, that's night and day, just having someone who listens to the challenges that you'll have, and structuring and talk and listening to what you're saying and then repeating it back to you in a way that goes, oh yeah, I actually understand that, and not feeling like you're out of your depth. I think there's a world of interesting things about that.
And how long has this I mean, what does it actually look like? When did you decide to this restructuring? How much of it was your prompt, your belief, and how much it was professional advisors suggesting, and how long did it take?
I thought we should do it probably about a year and a half to a year ago, but we were just scaling too fast to even contemplate it, and all we were doing was hiring to get to land it in the right way. I think it reached a point where, it's either now or never, right? Like if we continue to scale, eventually the network will get so big that the agency just won't exist anymore, because we'll just throw all the people over there. And so I think you've reached the point where you have to do it.
And what advice would you give to other entrepreneurs in this room and subsequently about something which, if you don't know, it might sound rather dry, about corporate restructuring and so on, taxation advice? What advice would you give them? So it's not necessarily dry advice. I'm just going to pimp this now. Burgess Salmon do a really good podcast for founders and entrepreneurs, and there's a load of free advice on really stupid stuff that you might not even know about, like buying a second home or like divorce and founders and things like that you never know you're going to need or want to know about. But for them to be putting that information out there and talking it through has actually been really great. And so that's the first thing I'll say. In terms of other advice, you don't know, like, God, tax is complicated. Yeah, who knew? Who knew, eh? And tax is complicated, but it's even more complicated in retrospect. You look back and think
actually, there is one thing, actually. So we put in place an EMI scheme for our staff, and it's always been pretty important to James and I that our staff are motivated in the same way we are about scaling. Get your ducks in a row before you do the EMI scheme. Like trying to unpick what promises you made in terms of equity, how equity would be handled, what the transaction is that would generate the returns on the EMI. Like it's been such a headache. And if you're going to do anything, even if you're thinking 10 years in advance, do that before you put any sort of option scheme in place.
It must be, I mean, it just is difficult for entrepreneurs. They're bootstrapping a business, they're either figuring out what the hell's happening, they can't make it make sense, or alternatively it's growing so fast they haven't got time to think. In whichever scenario, to stand back and say, you know what, we need professional advisors. Yeah. That's. I mean, you are the one of the two as a duo, presumably, who's been banging that drum for some time.
Yeah. I'm the one.
do you want to open up about this? It feels there's other stories lurking here. Let's go. Okay, someone who is more cynical than me, obviously, may take the view that corporate restructuring is just presaging an exit in some way.
So we get offers all the time.
And so just hold for a second. Yeah. What sort of offers and how do you respond to them?
So I believe that there is a business school, either Harvard or somewhere like that is teaching the same course to everyone. And that course is find 4 or 5 businesses that look vaguely similar, push them together, leave them to exist for a year and a half, then list them and list them. And basically that playbook.
You're nodding, David. You've done that course. He runs it.
But so that is almost constant. And we get that pretty much like twice a week in sort of peaks and troughs.
Presumably emails at about 11 or 12 o'clock when New York's woken up.
Yeah, exactly. Mostly, actually, most of them are based in Toronto.
Coast. Oh, okay.
There's a big thing about Toronto for some reason.
Oh, that's because the whole French games thing?
It's weed, basically it's weed stocks.
I didn't hear that. Not introducing a whole bloody city. But anyway, so back to, I've allowed you to deflect the point, which is the corporate restructuring with a view to exiting either wholly or partly?
I don't know. And it will definitely make it easier if it were to happen. So the first thing is, one of the outcomes of doing this is that we can't do anything for at least a year anyway, because we have to ask permission for HMRC to do even the work. So that puts a clock on stuff. I think that one of the challenges about where we've got to is if we were to want to have an exit, all the potential people who we'd want to exit to all value different parts of the business in different ways. So valuation for an agency group is very different to how they'd value a publisher and vice versa. And so we have to get our story straight for each part of the business if we did want to do any M&A. I mean, the thing I will say though is that also that works vice versa, which is if we wanted to invest ourselves in other businesses, if you wanted to buy or take some ownership,
have the vehicles,
like putting it into what was a mess of 3 companies all scrabbling for resources. A publisher collective, our network, if we wanted to buy some ad tech, why would we do that when we're also got a publisher attached? Like, it just becomes messier.
You're being very, very open about this. When we talked about this discussion, you mentioned this was in train, it wasn't quite set, and you obviously hadn't told your team at that point. But I suppose another way of reframing it, this is basically optionality. The tagline of EntreConf is the future is unwritten, and any fast growth business, the future is definitely unwritten. This gives you don't know what, but it might give options, whether inbound or outbound at some stage. If you were, I don't want to just keep banging the same drum, but if you were to consider exiting, where on the list of criteria, what sort of expectations? Is it to do with money? Is it to do with finding a good home, the feeling you've taken it as far as you could have done? What might be the factors? I am putting words in your mouth, of course, as well.
James and I are probably unemployable. So
that wasn't the answer I was expecting.
So anything that we did we would have to go off into the sunset, I think.
Right.
We'd cause too much trouble for any potential purchaser to just want us around.
Don't do an earn-out, they're terrible.
Yeah, exactly.
Earn-outs so rarely work.
And I'd just be completely upfront about that. Like, so much of what we've done is about choosing the things we want to do.
Right.
And where we are at as a business is considerably further ahead of where I thought we could get to.
Yeah.
When James and I started, we said that if we could sell the business for £1 million each, we would do that in a heartbeat.
Happy days.
But
would you do that now? Anyone know? What are you making at the moment?
Yeah, but it costs that much to wake the lawyers up, frankly.
Ooh, you were being so nice to them as well until then.
But that's the point.
That's another edit. Sorry, we're not having that going out. Really, unless you say it to someone else. In fact, hang on, slap pockets. We'll all do it, shall we?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I know I'm all ploughing one furrow here, but roll the clock forward. What might you do if you weren't doing this?
I take a lot of meaning from managing our business. So if I wasn't doing it, I would want to be doing another business. And I have a couple of things I want to do. But I can't imagine not working or wanting to do other business things.
You're a young man as well. Let me, at this point, throw it open for questions. Any aspects? I mean, Tim is being very, very open here, and of course he won't answer if it's too intrusive. But any aspect of running a business, developing a business, culture,
The EMI scheme is something that's near to my heart. I'm trying to get my head around it, so I can pack it in.
Okay.
So Martin, your business, just to say.
Yeah, I run a small, not yet independent video, voice, data comms business, which I'm trying to leave a national franchise because it's fizzling out. And so I've gone through double headcount growth in 1 year after 28 years in business. A bit peculiar, really. But I'm trying to get it off the wheel faster by growing it quickly. And part of that is to get some management team ownership of the business, so they've got some belonging and some motivation, dedication, commitment. So I haven't got to do it on my own. But question to you is, how many people do you choose? Is it all the management? Is it all the staff? Is it key people? How do you choose?
Much to the chagrin of our advisors, it's everyone in the company.
So it's not an employee ownership trust then?
No. So the challenge we've had is we have EMI shares for everyone inside the business, and the terms of our scheme say that in the event of new form of ownership, someone else will correct me if I'm saying this wrong. But the terms of transaction mean that at that point they would get shares, and they'd have to be bought out as part of those shares at the potential price.
Would they have to stay in the job for a period of time?
We didn't ever say that in our EMI scheme.
Were you advised to say that?
Yeah.
He's treated them all extremely fairly.
Yeah.
Wow,
so I think the thing about those schemes is the numbers.
Do you want another glass of wine, by the way? Yeah. I'm not trying to get more information out of you. I'm simply where it's running a bit low. Kind of in across. White, I think. No, you've drunk it all. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. There we go.
Yeah, lightweight,
there we go. I'll have some red, please.
Before you start, just make a slight adjustment. Sure. Okay.
Very good. I was just infilling. I knew it was a technical problem, really. Not even faintly.
So why are you getting picked up? I thought the M in EMI was management.
Yeah, it's meant to be. Yeah.
But it can't be everybody.
Very good.
So that's what we did. I think if you're going to do it, we were.
Cheers.
Everyone had some level of ownership, but we were pretty miserly about the numbers that were involved in it. And I think we could achieve the same amount by giving people bonuses if and when an exit were to happen, and we wouldn't even blink on it.
Is it more tax efficient to do it this way?
Yeah,
for the individual as well as for the company?
For everyone involved, it's more tax efficient. But I genuinely think that we've probably spent more on the initial scheme, the recalculation of the scheme, the valuation of everything else, than the kind of cash that would actually be paid out in the end results. And that's just because, it's one thing to say you do it, but then you've got to argue with your business partner, say, look, this is on your potential earnout, this is the amount of money we're giving back to cash, giving back to the staff. And some people will recoil.
Yeah.
It's great to hear that you bootstrap the company and you still have control of a very successful business, but it'd be good to hear on one side what you've been able to do without having outside investors, on the other side where you've been sort of restrained by not having the capital.
Yeah, what similar question, what would you have done differently had you had capital at that earlier stage?
I don't think the business would have existed. I think we'd have...
Overreached?
Yeah, definitely.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
Did you get interest from VCs or worse in the early days, Tim, that you turned down?
Not really.
You weren't on the radar, I guess.
No, we kept ourselves to ourselves. We didn't really go out looking for it. We had a couple of people who could have given us money at the start, but we never asked or we never sort of went for it. But I think we've always turned a profit every year, and we've never really dipped into any overdraft or any. There was one moment where we had a really big ad deal that we had to take a small finance loan for like 100 grand or something, but we've never had anything like that.
In order to be able to deliver that?
Yeah.
Must be an enormous deal.
It
must have been an enormous deal.
The claim to fame for our agency is we had a client who was were launching in Europe, and we helped them sort of do the media buying and planning for it. And the first iteration of the game was really bad, and we thought we'd screwed it up. And they'd spent about $1.5 million with us in terms of ad buying. And he said, "No, we understand it. We've made a mistake. This is what we're going to do." And
wouldn't you just love clients like that? It's okay, $1.5 million. These things.
So they spent about 2.5 launching Fortnite. So we did the launch buying for Fortnite.
And everything else is history thereafter.
But that's like, yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
But the reason I ask is because the go-to for entrepreneurs now is to go out into the angel community, get that initial capital. Why should a young entrepreneur do what you did? What are the advantages? I think it's just a given now. People go out and try and get external investment. They don't bootstrap anymore. So.
I think that if you're on your own and it's not a partnership, I think that's probably a really good option, because you get a multitude of opinions. You get to road test what you're doing. You get some level of emotional support. But understanding that, if your business is successful, that the rewards are going to go to that person to an outsized level rather. I think for partnerships, the reason that James and I have been able to be so stay together is because it is 50-50, and there is no one who can come between us in terms of the decision making. And so if it was a partnership and then you had an outside investor, the dynamics of that, or one or two or three or four outside investors, the dynamics of that I think are pretty corrosive. For our particular position, even now, ultimately, no decisions can be made unless James and I agree.
Brani, you had a query. Brani from Rocket Makers, the sponsors of tonight's here.
Interested to hear you say that you've flown under the radar from a kind of investment perspective. But thinking about the kind of Bristol and Bath region, leading question, what role do you think that's played in your growth, or not, as the case may be? How much has it been important to you that you've been here?
It's a brilliant place to run a media business. Bath's lovely. I think we have all the advantages of a city, of all the things we want and need, but it's actually a really small community, and most people know everyone else. We were based in the Hub originally, which is the Guild Hub, as a co-working space, and that was a really good place to sort of just get to know and scale people. I sort of wish there were more places like that now. Perhaps
you might found one.
Yeah.
Really?
So, well,
they just fish it. You never know. I think that's a yes, isn't it? When's that launching?
No. We've laid out our offices so they are more like a co-working space, just to try and get some of that back.
I'm aware of that. Let's. Any other questions? We'll come back to questions in a moment. Please.
Hi Tim. So I'm Zabir, startup founder, run the NatWest Accelerator, and I just wanted to ask, what advice would you have for sort of early stage business and finding, mentorship that is a right fit for you?
I think you can be really sceptical about what they're bringing, and I think trust your instincts on the conversations you're having, who you're talking to, where you're having them, and what the motivations are. I'll keep saying it. The energy that you and a partner bring to a business is very different to what you and an investor bring, or a mentor bring to the business. And if I was in a startup again, I'd be looking for that partner rather than necessarily a mentor or something else, because you need to make some mistakes.
And the other way round, would you or James, or indeed others, be mentors for earlier stage businesses and individuals? Have you been?
I have some other businesses that I talk to and try and help and just talk to. But the only thing I ever end up saying to them is, look, you're doing really well. Like, that's because generally, like, that's all anyone needs to hear, because in all of these, I think running a business from the start, you have 3 or 4 different avenues for people to undercut your confidence. Your client is always going to be saying you're not doing a good enough job. Your employees are going to be saying, oh, it's shit working here, pay me more. Your senior managers are going, oh, it's too much work, man. Why are you doing this? So you have to have someone next to you who's going, look, you're doing really well. You're making the right decisions. You're pushing on with the right scenarios. And I think, find someone who does that. If they come in and go, oh, this is all nonsense, that's not it.
Greg Dyke, and this is a sort of name drop, but I'll say it anyway. Greg Dyke, who then was a non-exec at Pearson, Pearson bought Future, and he came to visit, and I asked him about, and he was then running the BBC, some small business. I said to him, what's your advice about managing creative people? He said, you know what? I've tried everything. I've tried sticks, I've tried carrots, I've tried management way days, tried consultants, investors, I mean the whole bloody thing, mentors, the whole thing. The only thing, and it chimes with you, the only thing that matters is to say how well someone's doing. Creative people particularly, and I said, oh come on, that's nonsense surely, and I haven't said that to you. And he said, no, because for the vast majority of times, if we've got the right people in the right roles in the right company, they will be doing good work, and they just need to be told they're doing good work, and the marginal things you'll overstate it, it's fine. You're not going to lose. It's better to do that than to fight that last detail, which I guess sort of chimes with you. I want to come on to another area of your business, and in some ways it's easier for us to say than for you, this first part. A couple of weeks ago we had our Bath Life Awards, and the day before we got a message from Tim and James saying that they wish to do something to contribute to the absolute horrors in Ukraine. And we were, you know, like many companies, quite bewildered ourselves on what we all might do. And we were just incredibly proud to be able to announce, sort of on their behalf, that you were donating £50,000 to the Ukraine appeal, and an unconscionable amount of advertising as well beyond that, which is absolutely brilliant. And we've tried to use that as a bit of a prompt to say, you know, we all have roots, we all have opportunities, what might others do? And a few have come forward, which is brilliant. So I'm saying that, you know, brilliant, and you're not the man to say that at all, but I wanted to say that. I want to come on to the social responsibility of businesses, because that's, knowing you over the years, that's always been a key aspect for you. But talk us through about how you and James, you see your role in the wider community, particularly with young people.
So for many of the employees that join us, it will be their first job. And that comes with a level of responsibility and also a load of headaches. But I think, so when I joined Future, I was on £8,000 a year.
Bloody hell.
As a contractor. And I couldn't afford to live. Like I couldn't afford to pay rent. And so what I had to do is I had to go home each night, and then I'd just play games and review them for the other magazines so I could make rent. And I don't want that.
What, competitors?
No, no, just other magazines in Future.
Right.
So I never want that for any of our teams or anyone else. And so we've been quite forceful about how we pay, what our benefits are, how we structure people's holidays, so that it can be a good place to work. But by the same token, like, you know, we have a pretty diverse workforce, and that comes with some of its own challenges. So we've been hosting like a bunch of allyship forums around social issues. We have outside speakers come in to talk. It's like, I don't know why you wouldn't in our, like, if you could choose not to,
then you should.
Yeah, if you choose not to, that's a choice you make. But why would you choose that? So, yeah.
And is that, I will come back to the exit or destiny of the business. Is that, you know, a very different iteration of the business, might be into some form of foundation that is its purpose, is right enshrined in the whole thing, a bit like, you know, it's an outermost comparison, how Lego is structured and other Scandinavian charitable.
Yeah, so the business I want to make, and this is proper dreamland, is, so we as a country, we will put like 10,000, 15,000 kids a year through university to study video game development and how to make a game, how to design, how to code, how to make all the art for it. There's like 10,000 people employed in the video game industry in the UK at any one time. So they'll pay like 30 grand for their education and then just be kicked out. And so the thing I'd like to do when things have maybe calmed down a little bit is start an incubator for small game development teams, which I think would be very cool. And there are loads of sort of inbuilt advantages to what we have. But like, yeah, it seems mad not to be able to do those kind of things.
Well, I suppose it comes back to some of the points at the beginning that being an entrepreneur gives possibilities, and possibilities dare I say, may evolve over time in people's life stages and so on. And one for you is that particular destiny. Any last couple of questions? We're coming to the end of a very swift hour. Alex?
You've been very self-deprecating, Tim, the whole time. Free of bullshit, which is very nice. Yeah. But I want to hear a bit more. I want you to self-promote slightly.
Okay.
Tell us what it is that made it successful. What's the nugget?
He's thinking about the dog and pony show when it's up for sale. Come on, you've got to persuade these guys to pony up 50.
Okay. There is a flywheel that exists where if we get good at the ads part of it, both ads and publishing benefit. And the chain, basically, so we get to double dip on the investment. And I think that's part of it. Similarly, if Epic want to spend a load of money promoting Fortnite, that's amazing, but we also get to use that money across our network. And so there's a flywheel that has been growing and growing and growing. I think that's the core of it, is related businesses in the same industry that can support and push each other on.
Yeah, Charlie. And Charlie, what's your business?
An entrepreneur, I guess, by background now, working in renovating property. But as you've got big now and you're talking about corporate restructuring, how are you avoiding the very thing that annoys you about a large company that made you want to leave?
Yeah, don't we all grow into our parents, is basically. Hang on, it's a bit Oedipal, isn't it? Wipe that one.
So I genuinely, this does genuinely terrify me. And that is part of the reason why I think it's the right thing to do. I am relatively overwhelmed with the amount of stuff coming in, and I know the reason why people are pissed off with this idiot staff writer who's saying you need to launch a website in future is because they're overwhelmed with the amount of work. So, putting in leadership across those different businesses who can take advantage of the opportunities hopefully means that when people are coming up with ideas or coming up with better systems or processes or products, that they feel like they can actually be achieved rather than coming through just to me going, ah.
In other words, it's not a pyramid structure that you're essentially clogging
and we
decisions.
So
whatever.
We are as flat as we can possibly be in terms of our management. And when we were designing this version of the company, we had very specific structures in place to give accountability and leadership and strategy, to push that down as far as we possibly could. And that's something I know I never had in my old place.
Good question indeed. I think we're pretty much done with. Oh, Jane. Oh, it's always it's like an auction.
I've only got a simple one too.
Okay.
What keeps you awake at night, right now?
Prior to this discussion, yeah.
I genuinely, I'm terrified that someone will turn off the internet, and then our business is fucked. That's it.
Oh, what a downer to end on. You don't think that nice Mr. Putin's going to do that? That isn't the record either.
Yeah.
That first question then.
Also, there's an owl outside my window, it's really loud. So.
What is the converse? The converse question is what excites you at night? Is that? No,
yeah.
That's a different question. We are amongst friends.
What's the spring your step in the morning?
That may or may not relate to the previous one.
We have a leadership huddle every morning at 9 o'clock. No, 9:15 rather.
Huddle.
Huddle. So we get our leaders together, and I love our leadership team. I really do care about them a lot, and I want them to succeed. And that moment every day is a routine that I really treasure.
Every day?
Every day, yeah.
How long does it take?
About 10 minutes.
Wow.
I think it's really key to scaling what we do.
I think I actually would like to end the conversation at that point, because that's a very poignant moment. Couple of things as context. We are, this is what we're trying to do with EntreConf. We're trying to unpick extraordinary entrepreneurial stories to give some combination of inspiration. I hope, I feel it, but I'm sure you feel it as well. We've had that in spades today. To give practical insights, which ultimately that is a key part of being an entrepreneur, is knowing what you don't know and bringing advisors who do know. but also providing a platform where there can be this sort of great coalescence. It's lovely. I'm not going to do the huddle thing. That's a bit much. A couple of glasses in, maybe. But the sense of coalescence that I hope we can bring through EntreConf, of bringing together quite disparate people in disparate business sectors. That is part of the rationale. It's part of the enjoyment. Figuring out the puzzle of business. That's on our side of the table. On yours, Tim, I think on behalf of everyone, I'd like to absolutely applaud the heroic openness with which you've approached this, the extraordinary success story, and that phrase I mentioned right at the very beginning, having success on your own terms. I've known this chap for some years, and he is ultimately is not affected in a way that so many are by success. And if anything, I think your personal values, you now have this word optionality. You now have a yet greater opportunity to deploy them, which has come through so strongly. To all of you for attending, for Bryony and Rocket Makers for sponsoring this, absolutely a huge round of applause, and thank you very much to Tim. Thank you very much. Bravo, bravo, brilliant.